How do you ensure that you're running a big business? How are the systems created and designed with purpose and intention around making sure that, you could travel, do whatever you want and still get it going? We started the podcast, by the way. That's
cool.
kind of how we roll.
Yeah, that's what's up. I would say that they're in the midst of being formed in that way.
Sure.
Prior to this year, my number one priority when it came to business was, helping people and then learning.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really super concerned with my personal time or space or energy. It was whatever it takes, I'm going to do it. And now with, a significant other in the picture and wanting to spend time with her and not work 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I got to start, making different decisions. So it started with inspecting the team and just what was going on. And we had grown to 18 team members. We're running a bunch of different companies for because we run as the operator for the organizations that we partner with.
You help people do what you're trying to do to your business right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was okay, well, I'm pretty good at this for other people. Let me just do it for myself. It's always harder to do it for yourself because you have all the emotional ties and biases and stuff, and you want to believe your shit doesn't stink, right?
Yep.
And so I'm like, oh, no, he's super skilled in doing everything that I tell him to do because I'm a good leader. And then I'm like, wait a second,
Yeah.
There's a lot of boxes that aren't being checked here. How come these boxes aren't being checked? And so just having the tough conversations and drilling down to first principles right now so that I can see, really where is people's time going? Where are the inefficiencies? And that's been, frustrating and enlightening at the same time. And so we're almost out of the woods there. I would say it's really just, I guess from a system standpoint, it's just making sure that every process has a person who owns it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, if you could go back, because this is like we were talking about, an ode to my 22-year-old self. If you could go back and build with this intentionality earlier, knowing this is kind of the lifestyle that you want to build around, what would you have changed?
I don't think I would have changed anything because I think kind of similar to, the idea that you have to learn every role before you replace yourself in it. It was just so helpful for me to learn everything that I've learned by kind of trying everything, right? And so because it became very clear to me when I was running, I started as a fractional COO, right? There was a long journey to get there, but that's kind of what started this specific business. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, okay, well, the $10K a month that I'm making as a fractional COO for a coaching company isn't enough. So I need to obviously take on more. So I set it up as fractional. So, okay, let me get another client that's paying me that or more. And after, just running 2 companies plus trying to run my own, I was like, oh, this is a lot. Anytime something goes wrong, I'm on the hook. Mm-hmm. This is going to be stressful. I don't know if this is scalable. And so I just kind of sat with myself for a little bit and was like, if the only thing that happens here is I get a lot of data on what not to do, and I get to be around high level influential people and get to see business at a higher level than I'm currently able to see it at for myself, that's a win. And so I kind of just surrendered to the learning experience. And I still think that was the right move. Frustrating at times, challenging at times, but I mean, that's part of the game, right? Is you don't learn anything playing against somebody, playing a game that isn't challenging.
Yeah, I think it's a great perspective because a lot of people try and over plan before they go from 0 to 1. It's the quicker you can go from 0 to 1 of just getting started, it's likely the first thing you do is likely not going to be the perfect image of what you want it to look like.
The first 10 things, right?
Literally, right? Yeah. So just going back, just because we kind of just started the podcast on a whim, right? Cool. Give our listeners a little bit of background of Jordan, the highlight reel, as well as some of the major, I don't want to just say accomplishments, but the major milestones you guys have hit, because you guys have grown super fast. You're the guy that when I talk to a lot of people in the coaching space, you run the back end for a lot of these people, and you're very well known in the space. For people that don't know who you are, share a little bit more.
Yep. So should I look in the camera?
Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter.
All right, I'll look at you. Yeah, my name's Jordan, and I'm the CEO of Impact Operations, and so. We build systems for coaching companies. It's a little more nuanced to explain. Essentially, we operate as their operations partner.
Sure.
So I try and take on as much as I can for the companies, so long as there is that level of alignment. We've started to now only take on partnerships. I'm referring out or not taking on any project-based work just because it's not aligned with the ultimate vision that I have for the organization.
Can I pause you right there? Help me understand the nuance. Help our listeners understand the nuance between project-based work and actual partnership.
Yep, for sure. So project would be build out your CRM, build you a dashboard, build you a project management system. So one specific problem that you want to have solved. what I've noticed is that a lot of times the reason why those problems are not being solved in your business already is because there's no one other than the founder who owns them.
Sure.
And so knowing that it's kind of like addressing the symptom instead of the root cause. I've never had a project-based like thing go extremely well for both parties. It's either, we end up overextending ourselves, or the business that we're working with doesn't feel like they got what they wanted from it, and usually that's stems from improper expectation going into the project. So partnership then is, we line out everything that you want to take off of your plate, and I'm like, cool, I'm going to here, I need this percentage of the upside as well as what you currently have going on in order to take all this off your plate. You don't have to worry about it ever again.
What I've come to find through the difference of those models is that once you start to go towards the partnership-based model, recurring revenue model, it's very tough to go back, because as a founder, as a business owner on your end, I have to imagine it's so much more safe, predictable, strategic to build a company when you have an idea of kind of where revenue is going to be at for the long term, right? And partnering up with these companies, because especially on the operations side, what I've come to find is that like the ROI is not as immediate, right? Immediately, like the immediate ROI is like, hopefully you buy back the founder some time, but then like we need to make sure that we're aligned with the right founders, where when they buy back their time, it's not so that they could go lay on a beach, so that they could go produce higher revenue generating activity. For those that are just getting started and want to start buying back some time, because let's say you're at $5,000 to $10,000 a month in your business, and you have a couple clients, and you're doing everything, and you're scared to hire that first person because it lowers your profit margin, and you don't know if that's going to give you the ability to take on more clients or wherever. You're kind of lost there. What's the first step?
Yeah, I would you can only like we were talking about before, you can only outsource the ability that you've kind of conquered as a founder. And even though you are doing everything, if you're at 5 to 10K a month, you likely haven't had enough time in that spot to really distill things down to first principles and actually understand how to give them to someone else. So you don't want to try and delegate something that's super hard right now. You probably want to just like outsource your admin stuff.
Sure.
And at 5 to 10K a month, you probably like aren't even really in a spot to do that yet. Unless you're, I guess you could with a virtual assistant, right? Yep. So it's just understanding what that's going to take. Are you ready to decrease your income by 2K a month to hire the right, VA to get your email and calendar stuff and maybe some Slack communication off of your plate. But also understanding that that's going to take more time before it takes time off of your plate at first, right? Because you have to tell them what to do and how to do it and what it looks like. That's
been the scariest part of just growth as a business owner, is that first leap of hiring someone, because when you're so in the thick of it, it's actually harder to hire because you're not replacing your time in the beginning. It's actually, you're doubling down, because now you have to do everything that you're doing and then train someone throughout it. How do we make that easier? What systems, what technology, things that we can do to make that a little bit more seamless?
Yeah, the delegation process.
Because it sucked for me. My delegation process, I was not trained on how to delegate.
I think it's just expectations again, right? Like a lot of human frustration comes from just having, unrealistic expectations going into something, right?
Like, I think I'm going to hire this person, and then
everything's going to be easy. And that, like when we were talking about earlier, like some of the things I've inspected, it's kind of, it's that like chosen ignorance, right? It's like, I'm not going to look at this thing and just hope it gets done correctly, because I feel like if I look at it, then I'm going to have to take responsibility over something that's going to be challenging. And so I think that a lot of times when people make that first hire, they're going into it with wishful thinking. This person's going to care about my business just the same way I do because they tell me that they do. Well, of course they told you that. They were in a job interview, And so, I think the expectation that it's not going to be easy at first, and then just keep it simple. Watch me do it, then I'll watch you do it, then you do it yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So
John Maxwell talks about that a lot. It's like, I do it and you watch me, then you do it and I watch you, and then you do it and somebody else watches you, and then they do it, and it's like that constant replacement ladder.
And then just documentation. Keep it simple. Write it down. What is the trigger that determines this process needs to be done, and what is the definition of done there, right? Sure. Because a lot of times it's the unspoken assumptions, and one of the things that founders struggle with is they don't realize how much of like what they were able to do came through failure. And so when someone else fails, they get super upset. And it's like, dude, you failed 12 times before you got that right. Now you want them to get it right the first time because you get it right now. That doesn't really add up.
That's deep. I'd listen to that again if I were somebody listening to this right now. Can definitely relate for sure. It's a pain loop.
And sure. Because the biggest frustration for a founder is like, you're like, oh, do they even care? Were they working hard? How did they not see this? And you never had to question your intentions because you live in your own head. But you don't live in theirs.
Amen to that. Let's go a little bit deeper. You wear your faith on your sleeve. You're open about it. Every time we've connected, as well as everyone that we're connected to mutually, we're all faith-driven guys. Where's that played a role in your life? How early on was that a thing for you, and how's that played a role in business?
I would say, so it wasn't something early on. I mean, when I was really young, I felt connected and believed in God, but then I kind of came to this unconscious/conscious realization that, believing in God is like unwelcomed responsibility. Like
unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. Like I always had a very strong moral compass as a kid and was seen as like even though I was, in circles with, athletes and stuff, cause I was an athlete myself, I was also really gifted academically. And, it seemed pretty clear to me at a young age, like what was right and what was wrong. And so I was always just trying to do the right thing until that became like not cool anymore. Right. Sure. Whereas all of a sudden you're a goody two shoes or, golden boy or whatever. And, I kind of viewed so I wanted to, start exploring, and I was curious about some of the things that I thought maybe weren't the right thing to do. And having this idea that, I was being judged for every wrong decision I was making just felt uncomfortable. And so I chose to not believe in it. And then spent a lot of time, trying to justify that God didn't exist or like that, that religion was, bad. And there's obviously a lot of things in the news where, public figures or religious figures do messed up things. And so there's a decent amount of evidence to say like, if there was a God, this couldn't happen, or Certainly. This couldn't happen, or that couldn't happen. And so, I would say I spent probably like age 7 to, 26 just trying to pretend that God didn't exist.
Sure.
And it wasn't until I started pursuing entrepreneurship and studying super successful people, whether it be athletes or business owners, all of them had some type of spiritual component to it. And not that every single person does, but everyone that I read about had some type of spiritual component. I was reading Think and Grow Rich a lot. Obviously, they talk about the spiritual components in there. And so it started just as like a performance mechanism. I became spiritual because I thought it would make me better at business, better in life. And then as I just continued to pursue truth, truth led me to God. And I believe God is the ultimate truth. And so it's kind of, one of those things where it's become my whole identity is, because every single day it's, you have to choose to pick up the cross and carry it. And it's very difficult to do that. And if there's any fragmentation in your belief. And so that's why I choose to surround myself with guys who are on the same path. My partner is also very much on her path. And yeah, like I said, it's kind of just, there was a quote I saw where it was like, you need to meditate on the word of God, and instead in society, we meditate on, the latest album that came out or Netflix series, right? The content that you consume really dictates the way that your mind works. And so I'm a pretty obsessive individual. So when I realized that God was the ultimate truth, I became pretty obsessed with it. And so now it's like kind of all I do.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think you make a major distinctive point of how every day you have to reaffirm that. Because I think people think the walk with God, walk with Christ is pretty easy because there's a lot of stuff going on. You see it in the especially Western Christianity, the modern like new age type of faith. It looks so beautiful on Instagram, right? We're all wrestling with God. I think that's the point of it, right? It's not supposed to be a beautiful walk. It's supposed to be messy, and you're supposed to stress with it, struggle. Help our listeners understand, especially as young faith-driven entrepreneurs, what that actually looks like tactically on a day-to-day. Because for me, every day I'm like, is this real? Is this not real? I believe it when I'm around the right people. When I'm around the wrong people, sometimes it's like, yeah, maybe I could compromise on my values at times. What's that look like in your world? And how do you ensure that you're putting yourself in the right environment to continue to reaffirm yourself?
It's a great question. And how it looks like, what it looks like in my world changes so frequently, because it has been this just rapid, like, acceleration towards the path with Christ,
Sure.
right? Because, when I first started on my spiritual journey, I would, refer to God as like the universe, or, some type of quantum, presence. Yep. And then it was, the creator, and then eventually, it was a very distinct moment. I was at the house of a mentor of mine, Ryan Blair, and I asked him, because he's a, super successful entrepreneur, and I had worked with him for a while, so I knew how much he sought control over everything in his life. And I'm like, how do you like agree with this idea that some big egotistical guy in the sky, because at the time too, like, the idea of, like, if you don't believe in me, you burn in hell. I'm like, that's pretty, like,
pretty harsh.
Yeah, pretty harsh. How do you subscribe to that idea that you're not in control of your life, but it's already planned out for you by somebody else? And I don't remember exactly what his answer was, but as soon as he said it, it just, like, this wave of peace just washed over me that I had never had before. And it became very clear that I needed to start building my relationship with God.
Sure.
And so initially what that looked like was I would just try to, at one moment throughout my day, have a intentional, like, word with God. And it was no two-way communication at that point. I didn't even really think that two-way communication was possible, but it was like, all right, before I go to bed, I'm going to pray. Because prior to that, before I went to bed, I would always, like, write a letter to my subconscious mind. Right. And so now it's just like, okay, I'm going to replace subconscious mind with God.
Some would argue that they're the same thing.
I would, as I continue my study,
Sure.
that's, I'm, like, recognizing all the psychological and biological benefits to having a relationship with God.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, you're going into a quiet place and you're having an intentional conversation of all the things that you want out of life for both yourself and others, the things that you've done wrong and don't want to do anymore. And you're pursuing both the restriction of the things you don't want and the multiplication of the things you do want, with a greater good in mind, not just for yourself. And I would imagine that if you do that over and over, like, there's science that proves if you do that over and over and over again, even if you're not calling it God, it's going to make your life better and you're going to manifest these things, right? And so now doing it with and detaching from self, because one of the toughest things about, like, manifestation or bringing things into reality is, or for a lot of people at least, is, the sense of unworthiness, or, imposter syndrome, or am I good enough to do this thing? And if you believe that it's not about you, but it's about the all-powerful Almighty, then it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to question that.
Yeah.
Right? So then it is possible.
Would you argue? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Please finish your thought.
I was just, I realized I kind of went on a tangent there and didn't actually answer your question. So in terms of what it looks like today, it's just trying to be mindful. So every morning I have a pretty strict, like, ask God time block on my calendar. So I wake up, first thing I do is 3 rounds of Wim Hof, then prayer, and then I'll usually meditate, either a guided meditation or just sit in silence. And the prayer I found is a little more significant than the meditation, is, like, actually getting on my knees, and putting my head to the floor and sitting there until it feels like not just going through the motion, but until it like clicks. And then going into, the model prayer that, most people do.
Do you mind if I pause you for 1 second? On your knees, head to the ground in prayer. How long of a practice do you have to make that till it feels less awkward?
That's a good question. So I would say that it wasn't a practice that I chose. It was just something that happened,
Sure.
And so one of the things I love about entrepreneurship and running a business is that you run into some situations where it's like you can't really comprehend how you're going to get through it. And it was, so there were some instances with that, and then also with my girlfriend, where it was just like I couldn't figure out, like, for myself how to make things feel better. And so I just kind of, like, was brought to my knees. It wasn't that I chose to go there. And it was just like, okay, I surrender. And then again, that brought peace. And so I'm going to keep pursuing peace. And it just, it was more of, I think, just like a chemical thing where it's like, you know, if you get enough dopamine, enough serotonin from something, you're just going to crave it more.
Sure.
And so I think it's just a craving for that peace that leads me to it. So, I would say it wasn't awkward until like the third time, right? Because the first 2 times it was just like I was doing it and wasn't even thinking about it. The third time when I had to do it, I was like, oh, this is a little weird.
Yep.
But I don't know. I think I let go of it pretty quick.
Yeah. The reason I ask is I want to ensure, like, when I'm listening to this, if I was back in the day before I really started to understand and feel this stuff, I'd actually want to understand that there's no idealistic version of what it looks like, right? It does feel uncomfortable. It still could feel uncomfortable. You mentioned this journey to the truth, and I want to unpack that for a second, because what it feels like listening to what you're saying is the journey to the truth is like, for me, for you, I think we have a similar story where it's like, okay, I don't fully believe this yet, but it is objectively better. All good. Topo Chico on the shirt. That's more wealth spinning on the shirt, right?
That's exactly abundance.
I don't know if like Jesus is God or whatever this thing is, but I know it's objectively better to pray, to meditate, to do these things, because I'm reading in all these books, all these successful people are talking about it. And then as you continue down the rabbit hole, you start to study deeper and deeper, and then you get led to the truth. Would you argue that that's the process and that most people have to go through that? Because I feel like a lot of times, and biblically, you find God in your lowest points as well. You almost have to have that proverbial hand on the stove, that wrestle, that lostness, all that type of stuff. Help us understand that.
Yeah. So you asked if I would argue that. I wouldn't argue it. That's just what's been true for me.
Sure.
Right? Like, so I would just state it is, because I have friends that don't believe in, that aren't Christian, or, don't believe in Jesus or God. And, my take is this, is just like, to model Christ makes me a better human, and makes my life better, and makes the world around me better. So why would I choose to do anything else, right? And as I pursue it, and as I look towards it, and I'm not pursuing it with like some type of dogmatic like approach of, it has to be this way because my parents said or the pastor said.
Sure.
Excuse me. I am just, humbly seeking truth. I don't know what's what. I'm just trying to figure it out. And every step closer seems to be, bring more certainty, even in the mystery, right? Because I don't think it's ever going to be like some type of logical, or not necessarily logical, but some type of like 100% fact, because that would kind of eliminate the need for faith,
Literally.
Right? And it's not fun to play a game that you're going to win. There has to be some mystery, some mystery of the outcome that drives the excitement.
Well, think about it. That's why Jesus, when he rose from the dead, he only was seen by the people that already believed in him, because they didn't want people that didn't believe in him to outwardly get the confirmation of it, because that disconnects the ability to have faith. Mm-hmm. So when I started studying, I was like, that makes a lot of sense. The mystery is the whole gift of it all. Yeah. It's not supposed to make sense. Even the biggest historians, the people that are studying this for 10, 20, 30, 50 years, they still are trying to uncover the mystery. Yep. Sorry to cut you off, but it's just that brought up a really good point.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I think as I start to, as I mature and as I take on more responsibility and intentionally improve my stewardship of that responsibility, I, can only, I start to contemplate what it would be like to be God, right? Like if you were God and you were creating everything, it would make sense that you wouldn't, would you want, if you're a dad, right? You want your kids to believe in the things that you believe potentially, but you want them to do it under their own free will. You don't want to force them. You don't want to be a tyrant. Mm-hmm. You want them to choose to be around you. You don't want to force them to spend time with you.
That's good.
And I think that's, similar to the fatherhood of our Heavenly Father, is he doesn't want to force people into believing in him or spending time with him. He wants it to be under their own free will. And also the journey to that gets to be this, incredible, up and down roller coaster of an experience called life.
So good. So I like starting the podcast with like more tactical business stuff and then introducing God into it, because then we could start to parlay the God and the tactical. Yeah, exactly. Deeper into that, how does it show up in your business? Because you're playing in the space of high ticket coaching, the coaching industry, all that type of stuff, and there's a lot of shift going on in the coaching industry itself. There's a lot of great people, but there's also a ton of bad actors that have come up over the years as well. People that have made tons of money, but that's because marketing was pretty cheap and the market was pretty uneducated when it comes to purchasing this stuff. Do you ever find yourself at a crossroads at times when you have really great opportunities at the forefront to take on clients, but maybe they don't fit your core values? Like, how do you align your business and your mission to ensure that you're taking on the right clients that fit your personal core values?
Yeah. I think that, again, a great question and super relevant in the high ticket space, because everyone's a good marketer. They know what the audience wants to hear. And especially, I find that sometimes being a man of faith and wearing that on your sleeve can make you vulnerable to, like, because you're just basically telling people what your values are and what you care about and what matters to you. And so people who are, manipulative by nature, because, they subscribe to a way of doing business that is zero sum, whether consciously or unconsciously, they can, like, they know what to tell you. Right. And so there's been countless times, still on a weekly basis, I'll get referrals to people that I have no interest in working with. And for a multitude of different reasons. If it is like an integrity thing, like, I'll just tell them. And I've actually done that on calls before, where I'll say, hey, listen, man, this is a great conversation, and it does seem like you have a lot of potential with your business. I'm currently not interested in working with people who don't truly care about their customer. And not that it's like no judgment. It just seems like business is really about the money for you. And that's not, that's just not what I choose to do.
Because your entire model is designed to help perpetuate that, right? For the business owner, to help him optimize that. So if somebody's not doing business within the lens of integrity and you're plugging in as their entire back-end system, you're literally assisting them in helping scam more people or just magnify what's already wrong.
Yeah. And I think early in my career, I would, because I needed because I needed the client, or I needed the background or whatever, I would ignore red flags, and I would, choose to see the clients with rose-colored glasses of like, no, but, I can help him see that it's actually more profitable to do business the right way, or I can change their mind, or I can do more good from the inside than the outside. And that just never worked. Right. Because then it's, there's a whole lot of ego that comes into trying to take someone's business off their hands anyway, right? Like, we run into, even when it is aligned, it's still like, they're so used to having their finger on the pulse, or they're so used to being the one that everyone looks to, that then all of a sudden when they're starting to look to me, there's like, jealous, like unconscious jealousy, or even just fear that comes up of like, oh, can I really trust this person? Can I really trust their team? As soon as something goes wrong, it's, again, kind of forgetting the fact that things were also going wrong when they were in control as well. Business is never perfect. It can be problematic even when it is super aligned. So when it's not, and the core values aren't there, it just absolutely doesn't work. And I've, lost enough money and spent enough time, banging my head against a wall trying to figure that stuff out to just know not to do it anymore.
Yep. It's one of the hardest things too. And when you're in a service-based business, is saying no. But when you start to understand that saying no, like when you say yes to everything, you're objectively saying no to something else, because there's time on your calendar, et cetera. So even if there's a massive opportunity from a money standpoint, your team, like if you're taking on the wrong clients, your team's going to get bogged down. Eventually there's a diminishing return on it, because the client's probably going to leave if they're not fully aligned. We play in a similar space, so we're talking to a lot of similar people. There's a lot of really cool opportunities where you see people like mega famous you get introduced to at least on the internet.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, dude, I really want to work with those people because it's like good, quote unquote, like clout for my client book, and I can tell people about it, but they're just not in alignment. And I want to just highlight the fact that like that's not easy. It gets easier when you actually physically don't need the money, or
it's easier now.
Yeah, exactly. What would you say to yourself when it wasn't as easy, when the cash flow wasn't coming in as consistently? What would you say to yourself to help get over that hurdle?
Yeah. What would Jesus do? And even, before before, my faith was such a big part of my life, it was, the idea of embodiment, right? Of being the person who deserves X before you have X, right? And so I would ask myself, what would I do in this situation if my bank account had 10 mil in it? If my bank account had, if money was not a factor, what would I do? And try to follow that as closely as I possibly could. Again, I was open to more influence in the other direction when I was younger. Like I would say that, and then I would be like, all right, but let me call my friend to tell him what I'm going to not, like that I'm not going to take this deal, and ask his opinion to make sure I'm not missing anything. Sure. And then as soon as he was like, well, no, dude, I could see where you could potentially, help influence this thing for good. I'd be like, oh, you're right. Yep. I should take the 30K,
whatever. Trying to get confirmation bias.
Whereas now it's just a clear no, because God has like made it that way. So even deals that seem, so easy on paper and so profitable, and it's just going to be, it's not even going to affect the main thing. I can just take this on. It's just extra cash flow. It never works out that way. Something will go wrong to where all of a sudden that project falls apart. The CEO ends up ghosting after they've made like half the payment. We've built everything out. We're just trying to deliver it to them, and they just are nowhere to be found. Like random stuff just happens that I've just realized is, okay, this is just trying to guide me to obedience. I will listen.
I think that's how God shows up in business. Along the way, you're going to get tested with so many opportunities. I think that's why creating space is so important. Rest, time to think, because in those spaces, you can start to really identify if this is coming from God or not. Is this an appointment from God? Is this a knock on the door? And am I at a crossroads here? And how can I make a more strategic decision? And where that started to show up for me is a lot of people talk about the gut feeling. I think the gut feeling is simply just God communicating with you. And the more you answer and flex that muscle, the easier it is to listen to your gut. And you can make decisions in a quick second, which is why the best of the best I've come to find are the people that are able to synthesize information and just immediately make that decision. And you think that they're just being radical, that they're like, oh, you're not thinking through this. Is like, no, they've just had enough experience and time and rest and thought to really dial in this muscle that like it would take a year for someone to synthesize all this, where in a split second they can make these decisions because of all the experience, wisdom. And I think that comes from God. How do you decipher and receive word from God? Because like a lot of people used to talk about that for me, and I was like, is this just a whisper in your ear? Do you just hear it in your head? I've come to find that God, for me at least, communicates through feelings and thoughts. How does God communicate through you? In that exact situation, you're getting this weird feeling. Like, what's actually going on inside for you to like decipher this?
Yeah, I don't think it's a one size fits all. Like, sure. I think and because if it was, then again, there wouldn't be that mystery.
Yeah, it'd be too easy. Yep.
Yeah, part of it is you have to, like you said, create the space for God, because you never know how he's going to come into your life, right? And so sometimes it's feeling, sometimes and then what I found is like, again, the truth doesn't care if you question it, right? Whereas like lies, they
defensive.
They get defensive. They need to, lies need to be justified. Whereas like the truth brings peace. And so I just question it, right? Where it's like, okay, I think I'm hearing this, or I think I'm seeing this. Is that what you have for me? And then there'll usually be like a feeling of peace, or like a physical manifestation of like somebody will like randomly call me and say something that like alludes to what I had just asked God. And it's not always like that, that physically abrupt where it's, a physical sign or a physical word. It's just like that feeling of peace and trust and knowing, I guess, in the moment. Which probably doesn't help the viewer, but
no, I think it only makes sense if you're going through it, right? In theory, it doesn't land, but if you're playing in the arena and then you start to attune what you're saying to that, I think it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, and stopping to pray and ask and say, hey, God, this, and like just telling him, hey, this is, and just like any other relationship, right? Like you don't want to make assumptions, and so if I think you're saying a certain thing, it makes more sense for me to just clarify with you. Hey, Antonio, I think you're telling me this. I just want to make sure I understand your intentions properly before I, act on your behalf, right? And so stopping to ask and really showing God, hey, I'm trying to act in obedience to you, not myself. And because I am human and I have these biases and these desires and these needs, I understand where I could, maybe get, misguided from those. And I just want to be sure that I am acting in your truth. Is this what I'm supposed to do? And then just being willing to wait and sit in, because that's what faith is, right? Is like being willing to sit in the discomfort or in the anticipation or in the whatever the feeling is, being able to sit in that feeling long enough to where you do, where the answer is given.
It's really good. You mentioned Ryan Blair being a mentor to you, outwardly Christian-based entrepreneur, very successful. From what I've deduced, where I'm getting destroyed with his ads right now.
Yeah.
It seems like he's making like a push into whatever his offer is currently. How important has mentorship been for you throughout this whole process, as you're deepening your core values and growing in your business? Where's mentorship showed up?
Yeah, I think mentorship is an interesting one, right? Where, and even like using the word mentor, I think is thrown around a lot. I think, and Ryan definitely at a time in my life was a mentor where I would, seek his guidance on things. And I still do, when I was like earlier this year, restructuring some things with the business, I, reached out to him, hopped on a call. And so that's a great luxury to have that relationship. But I don't know that I think there's a lot more people out there claiming mentor or claiming mentorship, and not a ton of true mentors out there. So
help me understand that first.
Yeah.
Go deeper.
So I think there's a difference between like coaches and mentors,
sure.
Right? Coach is somebody who, and even that, I think there's a lot of coaches that aren't actual coaches.
Agreed.
In order for someone to be like a coach or a mentor, they have to see you in your highest, and they have to believe in your ability to achieve that, and they have to want that for you. Otherwise, they're just projecting, their image or their ideals or their desires onto you, and potentially manipulating you through advice to confirm their own biases.
Sure.
Right? There's very few people out there who want you to do better than them, and I think a mentor needs to have that, or needs to be so far ahead of you that they can't that they don't even really have to combat the idea that you could potentially be better than them.
Yeah.
In whatever area, and not that anyone can be better than any one individual at all, because we're all unique. But I've just noticed there's a lot, like specifically in the coaching space, there's a lot of ego that comes in, and so mentorship, I'll kind of like deflect that part and just say seeking. Paying for speed and paying for knowledge and paying for other people's experience and the ability to learn from other people's experience has been incredibly important, because I got started in entrepreneurship late, and it felt like I was behind everyone. And, it was like during the 2016, 2017 when I started to like really try to build an online agency. Mm-hmm. And around like 2018, I think was when Tony Robbins came out with like the knowledge-based blueprint, where he was, trying to teach people how to sell their information online. He partnered with like Russell Brunson. And all of a sudden then everyone started launching ads, right, of selling coaching. And I did get lost a little bit in the idea that everyone was telling the truth.
Yeah.
And like, oh man, all these kids are making millions of dollars. That's crazy. I should be able to make millions of dollars. And so paying for speed was super important, even when it didn't work out, right? Like paying for speed, to me, that was just like confirmation and indicator that I was interested in this area, and I was going to figure it out one way or another. If I can find somebody who's already done that and who's already failed along that way, and can, maybe point out some of the holes along the path, and also, some of the tactics and strategies that allowed them to, to finally figure it out, it's helpful. I think also what's been more helpful is mentorship and coaching as just an objective, loving, third-party lens, like third-party perspective.
Yep.
Who's also pursuing truth and who is also skilled in whatever arena I'm trying to increase my skill set at. Because again, we're humans and our ego wants us to believe we're better than we are, wants us to believe, we should be further along, wants us to believe we're already further along, wants us to, be comfortable, and growth is not comfortable. And so having somebody who can, kind of point out the intentional suffering that needs to happen along the path is helpful. I don't know if that answered the question though.
No, I think it does. And I think it sparks a couple other good points where I think long-term mentorship starts to evolve into more of like a board of advisors per se in every area of your life, right? Like you have your spiritual mentors, then you have your business mentors, fitness, all these different pillars that are core values in your life. You start to align with other people that are rather ahead of you or on the same journey of you, where you can really understand their experience and play the game alongside them. And kind of, that's like the shortcut, in my opinion, is like you go fail, but then the time to get corrective feedback is a lot less. And the cool thing about it is long-term, as you play in the game for long enough, most of the time you don't even have to pay for that. These people just become your friends, these relationships. Like you and I will have a relationship moving forward, and anytime you need anything finance related, you could just call me. And anytime I need anything operations related, we could just call each other, right?
Yep.
We borrow each other's experience. In the beginning, you mentioned that you have to pay, right? What I didn't understand, now that I do, but I did this in practice without understanding, is that there's two ways to pay. You can pay with your time, or you can pay with your money. When you have no money, you simply just pay with your time the entire time. And that's worth it because you're learning discernment. Once you obtain money, the speed comes in, because then you can start buying more people's experience. And if you've paid with time for long enough, you've earned the discernment to start losing less money when you pay. But you'll still lose money.
I have a question for you now.
Yeah, please.
Because and this was the thought that came up that kind of threw me off when I was when I was just giving my answer, is even when I pay for speed, when I pay for knowledge or experience from someone else, sometimes I still have to learn the lesson, right? So sometimes I still have to go through the pain, I still have to go through the struggle. Like you can't bypass by just borrowing someone else's transformation or someone else's experience in certain cases.
Yep.
And I'm curious, have you found that to be true for yourself as well?
I think as men, we all have our own proverbial hand on the stove. It's just a matter of how long you're willing to keep that hand on the stove. The most coachable ones are like, we touch the stove with like a finger and then we get it right off it. There's a lot of people, as like, if your ego continues to stay in the way, you'll stay on there the entire time. And then eventually your coaches and mentors won't even want to coach and mentor you because you're not willing to learn from the lesson and get corrective feedback. So what I've come to find is, especially in business, we'll keep it in a business lens for a second, the best mentors, in my opinion, are the ones that you can financially align with you, so that you're no longer just paying them for their time. You're aligned financially to where if you win, they win. Because now they're significantly more incentivized to invest time and help you decrease the mistakes that you have, because it rather increases or decreases the amount of financial and business success that they have. So that's the playbook that I've started to run, where I've invested so much time into these, into understanding, learning the relationships. Then I start investing money to where in business, I just buy my relationships at this point, because it speeds up the value, because I'm showing somebody that's a little bit further ahead of me that I am respecting them by paying for their time, because it's worth it. They've earned this money. Then I find a way, and this is where you have to create enough skills and have enough offers, which, if you and I are talking, we have this right now. You can create a way where there's so much mutual value between you and this person, where you can rather create a joint venture, a business partnership, and you no longer have to pay significant amounts of dollars for their time by just for this one-on-one mentorship deal. This is you can create a business together, or you have this partnership together where it's so crazy how it aligns. Like, these people are sometimes your idols, and now you're on a call with them multiple times a week. So I think that's just the evolution, at least from what I've seen. But I know I over-answered your question, but that's great. Something that was, I wish I learned earlier, because that's the playbook that I've literally been running. We don't even do any marketing. I've never done anything of marketing besides running that playbook. And, the business has skyrocketed. So that's, how's that showed up in your work? Because I know that
that was what started the business. I was like, okay, I think when I first started Impact Ops, I had maybe spent $80,000 or $90,000 on coaches and mentors or programs and stuff. And, I was like, I just want to, all of them have the same problem. They want their time back. And, I've done enough things and built in, marketing agency, staffing agency, automation agency, did high ticket sales. I was like, I understand the whole landscape of the space. I care about the space. I understand, from a consumer's perspective, what needs to be true, and from an operational perspective, what needs to be true. I can just fill the biggest hole that they have, which is like having a, worthy operator, and then I'll get paid for the same mentorship that I used to have to spend lots of money for. And that was, what started the relationship with Ryan, and, multiple other relationships where I've been able to just, again, get paid to learn basically, because I was, creating disproportionate value for them and their organizations and aligning our incentives of like, hey, I'm going to bust my ass to make sure you and your organization win. And I don't then have to ask for anything, because now you're naturally incentivized to make sure that I'm better at my job, to make sure that I understand what you're thinking, to make sure that, we're operating from the same playbook.
If I could go back, I would probably, knowing that I was entrepreneurial minded, still probably rather worked a job as like an entrepreneur or contractor work, because I think there's a really valuable benefit to spending 12 to 24 months inside of an organization that's already operating at a super high level, knowing that like you're eventually going to want to start your own thing, but working with someone that's where you want to be. Because like you just said, you're not only getting the mentorship, but you're getting paid to be mentored there. Mm-hmm. You're starting to see how success, or you start to understand like where would you go different? How do you optimize and how do you play this game? That's something that I'd love for people that are listening to this to at least explore as a tool in their toolbox. It's like, yeah, it's a big stigma right now. Like, oh, screw the 9-to-5 thing. No one wants to work a job, but there's a lot of benefit to working a job if you're doing it strategically. Mm-hmm. Let's go deep into, let's zoom out a little bit. Want to go a little bit into your business, because you guys are helping founders scale. Big difference between growth and scale. I believe growth is more revenue based, all that type of stuff, front end stuff. Scale is, can we sustain this through back end operations, all that good stuff. Where does AI come into play, and how have you seen the shift? Because I think you started this, correct me if I'm wrong, before AI really became a craze. And how much has it played a role in your world now?
Yep. So for reference, started Impact Ops in like April of 2021.
Okay.
Officially incorporated, I think, in August of 2021. And so AI wasn't even a thing at all. Yep. Honestly, at that point, people were, the big craze was automation. Yep. And most people had that wrong, right? Where they weren't really automating things. They were delegating it to a virtual assistant or something like that and calling it automation. I think now, it's come full circle to where now people are calling things AI when it's just automation.
Sure.
But AI has changed everything. And so we were scaling as AI, started to become more prevalent. And I recognized that I would have no time to learn AI and to be able to figure out how to integrate it into our vision and into, the services we provided, and that would eventually lead to our demise if we continued to take on new clients and continued to have to like ramp up to understand their business, their customer, their clientele, to audit all their stuff and to get to know their team and the founder and all the nuances that go into running someone's operation. And so I made the conscious decision to actually to stop scaling, and not only stop scaling, but to get rid of, some of the clients so that we could focus on providing the best service we possibly could. Because even though, having done that, recognizing that AI isn't quite able to drive, it raises the floor of the organization, does not necessarily push the ceiling higher.
Unpack that.
On its own, right? Well,
I need you to talk to me about that like I'm a third grader.
Okay. So AI is able to do simple things it's able to do complex things one-off. It struggles to do complex things at scale with different variables.
Sure.
Because each time you need it to do something, it has to be prompted specifically for that situation. And obviously that increases and updates constantly. But there's enough hallucination, there's enough fallacy with how it works that you can't trust it to take on like to oversee big projects. Like there still has to be a human in the loop, and it's usually not gonna perform better than that human if they're good at what they do.
So
right?
let me repeat back what I think I'm hearing from you. AI can be an effective tool in each silo of the business as long as there's a human prompting it and running it, but it's very tough to integrate it fully across the business to make it run as more of like an organism.
At this point now, there is like there's the agentic structure, and you're able to basically get one agent to one AI workflow to oversee another AI workflow. I haven't spent as much time in that yet because I think that there's going to be a lot of inefficiency in trying to be the first one to figure that out, as opposed to just wait for someone else who has more resources and has more understanding to figure it out. What I do to make sure that I'm on the cutting edge of artificial intelligence is just make sure that I have weekly meetings with the smartest people I know on the topic, and have mutual projects with those people, so that again, they're incentivized to make sure I understand it, and I'm incentivized to make sure I understand what they're doing. And then I just kind of trust that as those projects continue to develop, I'll pick up more understanding. So I wouldn't say I'm the best person to be able to explain how AI works right now. How we're utilizing it in the systems that we work on is a lot of like context transfer, context analysis. We're having AI handle a lot of that.
What does that mean?
Yep. So everything's recorded these days, right? All your calls are recorded by some type of AI note taker, or by Zoom or Loom or whatever you're doing. Same thing, like all your processes you can record into Loom. We try and make sure everything's documented. So every process that you have in your business is documented into, we use Notion, or you can use Google Docs. Sure. And so everything's documented, recorded, and there's correlation between, let's say, the sales call that a customer goes through with your sales rep, and then how they're going to interact with your customer success rep on their onboarding call or on their coaching calls.
Sure.
And so going through the sales call to look for, what is the real problem they want to solve through this program, and making sure that that is now understood by the person who's going to be taking that handoff.
That's really good.
We use AI to analyze, automatically that call, because, your sales call, you're trying to get the salesperson to do it is just very inconsistent, right? Like, even though it's in their best interest, salesperson's they're hunters, right? And so as soon as they get the kill, they're on to the next one. It's a terrible way to look at a customer, but it's just the reality of the situation.
Certainly get it. So I want to unpack that from the lens of a tangible example. I'll use myself as a tangible example. So we have an offer where we essentially plug in as the chief wealth officer and fractional family office for businesses that are doing 8 and 9 figures. Mm-hmm. And so we plug into the entrepreneur's journey, and I still run the sales because it's still like low volume. So we take on maximum 6 to 10 clients a month. And the lifetime value is over $250,000 per client. So it's worth me to continue on the sales side of things. That being said, the biggest struggle that I have is when we take on a client, relaying to the team, because we have a 4-step sales process. There's a lot of information being transferred, as well as a lot of understanding of the client's desires, because the financial stuff is the easy part. It's really understanding truly what this client wants if you want to keep your clients for long. Like, what is the actual reverse engineered feeling, outcome, desire that this person's looking to obtain? Do they optimize for peace? Do they optimize for money? Like, what does that all look like? So every one of our calls are recorded. And what I didn't fully understand was like, all right, me taking notes, especially with the way I do it, my team's not going to fully understand the translation. And I don't want to take the time, even though it's necessary, to spend an hour with every time we onboard a new client with my team of explaining every single thing. So when then we started implementing the system that you're talking about, every single call is recorded, and then it's run through a freaking crazy GPT prompt that really dials in on like what our offer's about, what are the exact things that a team needs to know about all this stuff, and synthesizes that information so that our team has an entire playbook on how to serve this client and onboard them efficiently.
Yep.
Is that
so
similar to what
I
you're
can
talking
contextualize now my previous answer with that with that example. So that is what I refer to as raising the floor, because essentially what you're solving for there is the fact that this process would not be done well manually by a human being every single time.
Yep.
Right. And so while it might be done well once or twice, like you're making sure that the standard is this is always done. And now hopefully what's happening is that then the human being, instead of taking the time to gather all that information, is now spending their time looking at it, understanding it quicker, and is now able to make decisions and or have communication that is more hyper-personalized to what that person wants than they would have been otherwise.
That's the point. And that's where when people say AI are going to replace humans, I think that's inherently stupid, at least in the short term.
Depends on what they're doing.
Exactly. So agreed, because like if you're resourceful enough, it's not, right? It's going to only replace the people that don't adopt it or that stay ignorant or aren't actually building a skill set. But think about how much time, energy, and money that saves the founders and the businesses itself, because it's not replacing the humans in the business. It's helping the humans become more effective. It's the same thing with like, when you hire a law firm back in the day, half the time you're paying them for them to go back into research to identify this stuff. All they have to do is simply find the research online now through the AI, and that's reducing a lot less time from the law firm's perspective, but then a lot less money that people have to pay for legal advice.
Yeah.
So that's where I think AI is really starting to show up.
That's
where
the biggest.
it's headed is a different story, I think.
Yep. And that's like, to answer your question of like, how are we using it? That's how we're using it, is just the context transfers, because inside of an operation, also, you don't want to create any type of key man dependency or any type of, individual dependency.
Sure. Unpack key man. I'm trying to keep this super simplified. So key man dependency, I understand it.
One person has, so key man, so like a key individual, right? So one person is super important to ensure that this process gets done correctly, right? And so a lot of times, especially in a remote work environment, there's silos. So like one person's handling it or one department's handling it, and they're not talking to anyone else about it, right? And so they're just doing it. But what happens if that person's gone? Now all of a sudden you can't do it, or it's very inefficient for somebody who has no context to then have to go gather all the context, solve problems, to find the context, to understand the context, and then to use it in an actual business function at the same level of proficiency that the person who did it every day did, right? It's just unlikely to happen. And so the key man risk is, if anything happens to this person, your business is kind of screwed. And so what AI does is, again, because everything's recorded and analyzed, allows you to mitigate a lot of the research that would be necessary if somebody else had to come in.
I would argue that risk, the key man risk itself, is a huge reason as to why a lot of people don't think coaching, especially coaching companies, aren't sellable assets. Because a lot of founders don't take the time to go deep into the systems, the processes. That's really what's going to build in the scalability to actually create an asset that has what we call enterprise value. Because the key man risk is like the founder's the marketer, you hire some salespeople, and it's a pretty non-robust system that's going on. If I'm looking to buy your operation and you have a good offer and there's a lot of traction and you guys are making money, the less I have to be dependent on one single person for every single thing, the more chance of success I have as someone who's coming in from an outsider's perspective that doesn't know the business as much. Mm-hmm. How are you articulating that to your clients if they're looking to build sellable assets? In the coaching space specifically.
Yeah. So with the coaching space specifically, I'm not recommending to any of my clients that they sell their coaching company, right? Because a lot of times it is tied to them as the creator. And if we're working with them, it means that they find a sense of purpose in the transformation they teach through their coaching company. And they don't want to get rid of that, right? But what you can do is build sellable assets through it. So for instance, we work with an individual who has a large following in the publishing space, and there's a lot of ways to build software that helps with the publishing space. And so when we first came in, we built out the infrastructure, we removed him from the day-to-day so that he could start to conceptualize these ideas, and then we started building out software on his behalf so that now he is building enterprise value through the cash flow and the influence that he has due to the coaching, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I've started to see that as a major shift. As a lot of people in the coaching space, great cash flow mechanism, right? It's I don't want to say easy path to 7 figures, but it's a much easier path than a lot of other business models.
If you're really good at something that you can teach, it's an easy,
it's very highly profitable, and a lot of people are now starting to build the sellable asset through software. And the cool thing about that is a lot of people previously that had to build softwares, if you want to scale that software more aggressively, you've had to resort to raising money,
capital,
or taking on debt. You can bootstrap, which means taking money out of your pocket, your cash flow. You retain 100% of the business because the equity of that business, of that sellable asset, is literally the most expensive piece of it. The longer you're able to take that cash flow and bootstrap it, the more you have a fruitful exit on the back end because you own most of the company. So that I think that's a really good point that you brought up, as well as what I'm starting to identify in my own business as well as starting to piece out the intellectual property that we're creating and looking at that as more of a sellable asset from a cash flow perspective, because you could start leasing out your intellectual property as well and license it.
Yep.
That's a huge piece. Do any of your clients do that? Any type of licensing mechanisms?
So they do like partnerships. No licensing mechanisms currently, though that is something that we're, potentially going to explore once the software component is built. Is like leveraging that software and allowing other influencers in the space to kind of license it as their own.
Sure. Kind of like how Go High Level's doing, like build upon that platform.
Similar, the white label, like the true white label doesn't really work. It would be more so like integrating it into the service, into their service delivery.
That makes sense.
Because white labeling a software is just extremely complicated. So no licensing out their their intellectual property. I would say the closest thing to that would be like partnerships.
Sure.
Where you basically combine forces with somebody else who has their own intellectual property, and then you combine and sell that together.
I'll pull us out of the weeds because I could talk about this stuff deep all day. We'll talk about it offline. As we near closer to the wrap up point here, you had mentioned that you have a partner now, and you've built this entire machine without a girlfriend, without a significant other at this point. Now you're building it with one. How has that changed everything? It's from the perspective that I'm getting, it feels like it's shifted a lot in you in terms of like your values, your vision. Help me understand.
Yeah, priorities. I guess is the simplest way to put it. Is she is now a higher priority to me, right? So it's like God, the mission, her, and the business is just a means to those things. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't put time. Like I'm still, I would say the last 3 weeks have been really in it. 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks, where I'm putting in, 14 hours a day. So it's not like the time has decreased, but the intention of that time is no longer just, hey, I want more time for the sake of understanding, for the sake of, having reps, for the sake of shouldering the load. But it's, okay, I'm going in here with the intention of making this more efficient so that I can get my time back. And I think I was kind of going through the motions as it pertained to that. And now there's like a sense of urgency of like, I want more time with her. I want more time. Like I also now have a, like a more realistic timeline of when I want to start a family and things of that nature. And I don't want to be it's hard enough working, 14 hours a day when she's there and I want to spend time with her, especially when we're traveling and things of that nature. I can't imagine doing it with kids. Right. And so, and also luckily, the way it's been, the way that God's designed it is I don't think it's actually advantageous for me to be working that much. I think I would be able to think clearer, make better decisions, higher leverage decisions, and be more intentional with my time if I, created more space and more time to allow miracles to come, to come through.
That's so good, man. Did you have an intention around starting a family at some point? Did you ever find yourself, let me ask this differently. Did you ever find yourself throughout the thick of it going through this entrepreneurial journey? And I'm asking kind of for myself that, did you ever lose the thought that you could ever find the person?
Yeah, for sure. And not only have I had the thought, other people have projected that thought onto me of you work too hard, you're too focused. There's no room for a woman in your life. And just like, when anyone tries to project limitation on me, I just am like, all right, that's your story,
Sure.
not mine. But I did come to terms with, in prayer and as I built the relationship with God of just like, hey, God, is this, if this isn't part of my path, if I don't get, a divine partner in a woman that I can, build with, that's okay. I'm fine with that, I guess. I feel like I'd be better with that person though. And that was kind of like the conversation I had with God was like, I think I've gone as far as I can in terms of being able to love myself and get to know God through self-love. What would be really helpful for me right now is if I could, pursue God's love through someone else. And shortly after having that conversation was when I ended up meeting her. But prior to that was a lot of inner work and, understanding my relationship to women, and how I viewed them and how I viewed myself as I interacted with them and what I would tolerate from them, what I would tolerate, what was, most, virtuous in terms of, how I approached it and how I interacted. I think because of the intentionality of, how I'm building the business, it would only work if I put that same level of intention into the partnership and into the seeking or, acquisition of that partner. Because I needed her to be that intentional as well. Like there had to be full alignment in order for it to work.
Sometimes when you play this game of business, you lose this sense of emotion and this love for yourself and I'll speak from my own personal experience, where you almost like lose faith that it's possible to feel love for yourself. And then you like that compounds with the inability to think that if I can't love myself, how can I love somebody else? Or how can I receive love from that person? And then when you make the intention to create enough space and experience God's love through you and realize that you're enough, you're worth it, do the inner work, start to heal and start to really create this sense of love and peace for yourself, I think that's when God starts to introduce the right people to you. So it's
challenging because when the right people come, like, your natural instinct is like, oh, this is scary. I don't know what this is, and so that's again, like, I don't think I would have been able to navigate the last 7 months without having built that relationship with God prior, without having built the relationship with myself prior of, being able to trust myself, being able to, filter out negative voices in my head or filter through different triggers and like reactive emotions and things like that, because all that stuff comes up if you're, if you're in and navigating a conscious relationship.
Yeah, really well said, man. Thank you for sharing that. Last question. You're writing a book about your life. We're at the table of contents of it. All of the major highlights. Take us back to a point where you would say was the biggest momentum shift in your life. Let's talk about that moment, and then we could talk about what you may have done differently or not.
There's a clear line in the sand for me. Was 2016. I was in San Francisco. I got a call from my dad, and my dad's my best friend in the world and biggest supporter throughout my entire life. And he called me to let me know that he had been diagnosed with cancer, and skin cancer. He's fine. The skin cancer was removed, but I didn't know anything about, like, I wasn't a doctor. I didn't know. I thought skin cancer was just as serious as any of the other cancers. And so like being faced with my dad's like mortality, and then also his fear around that mortality, he, expressed vulnerably to me that he was unsure of how, he'd be able to provide, like if something happened to him, I have a younger brother who's 12 years younger than me and, 2 other younger brothers. And, he was like looking to me as, Jordan, you're the one who's got it figured out. Meanwhile, at the time, like I'm working a corporate job, miserable, probably, would qualify as like depressed and completely broke, couldn't even afford a flight back to Arizona from California to be able to see my dad. And it was just like, that was like kind of like a rock bottom moment for me, where the person that, I love most is in a place of vulnerability, needs support, and I have nothing to offer. And so, spent a lot of time in introspecting that night and, emotionally introspecting, and wrote myself a letter that, I didn't know exactly how I would be able to help the people I care about, and how I would be able to change my situation, but that I have enough gifts, enough talent, enough ability, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that I see things through the other side. And so that was probably the moment where everything changed for me.
Yeah.
It took a while to actually change, but
sure.
I was willing to go through any wall after that.
Yeah. It seems like the what and why changed, and then God started to help transpire the how for you.
Yeah. Cause I had, up until that point, been very selfish with my decisions.
Sure.
Right. It was, what brings me pleasure in this moment, and what makes me feel better about myself, what makes other people view me as cool. Mm-hmm. That was pretty much the filter of how I made decisions. There was some, innate desire to help others that was layered in there sometimes, but for the most part, I think because I didn't really view myself as safe, I didn't feel certain and secure in who I was, so I was constantly looking for that outside of me. So all my decisions were very selfish in that regard. At that point, it was okay, no more selfish behavior. I
think that's a big reminder for a lot of young men, where it's that's okay. I think it's a natural progression, and the worst thing that you can do when you find yourself in that moment is resort to shame. Because I would argue that we're relatively hedonistic creatures in nature, right? Which is why Jesus essentially had to come and give us grace. And so I think it's important to, when you realize that you might be out seeking your own personal pleasure and not living out fully in your purpose, allow that to be that catalyst moment before things have to go too deep, so that you don't have to hit, everyone has their own proverbial rock bottom, but I only pray that rock bottom has a higher floor than most. So just a side point there.
Yeah, I would agree.
Any thoughts or anything you want to leave our listeners with?
22-year-old Antonios out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there was, a lot of good words said, from you as well, in terms of giving yourself grace. I think the biggest piece of advice that I would give to my own 22-year-old self, or yours, is believe in yourself, right? Know that anything that you can see in your mind's eye or that you have on your heart, you can accomplish. And going out into the world with that knowing is gonna leave you better off, even in the challenges, even in the fear that comes with that. Because pursuing the way that you become better is pursuing that fear, pursuing that challenge. And that usually comes when you're, acting towards the vision that God's put on your heart or in your mind.
Amen. Really good, dude. Well, dude, pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for pouring into us. It's a blessing for us to be able to meet in person.
Likewise.
And thank you for delaying your trip for this as well. I mean, it means a lot. I don't take that lightly. Guys, if you like this, please comment, subscribe, do all that cool shit. And we'll see you on the next one.